Well, where should we start? With the billionaire who allegedly paid Ferrari to erase his Enzo from the company's records? The owner who ordered a second Enzo just to test whether the first one was faster? Or the secret prototype that could supposedly lock its own driver out after detecting fear? Because the Ferrari Enzo was never just a car. It was a private invitation into one of the most exclusive clubs in the world. Ferrari decided who was worthy of buying one, how the car would be configured, and in some cases, what owners were allowed to do with it afterward. But once Ferrari began dealing with people who had unlimited money, enormous egos, and absolutely no experience hearing the word no, the contracts became much stranger. These are 10 Ferrari Enzo stories nobody was supposed to know. Hashtag number 10. The owner who demanded a faster red. Most Ferrari Enzos were painted in recognizable colors: red, yellow, black, silver. But one customer allegedly believed the standard Ferrari red was not aggressive enough. He did not want a darker red. He did not want a brighter red. He wanted a red that made the car look faster while standing still. Normally, this would be the point where a company politely explains that colors cannot change vehicle performance. Ferrari reportedly responded by creating an entire paint development program. Engineers tested dozens of pigments under sunlight, artificial light, television cameras, security cameras, and even helicopter footage. The customer rejected every sample. One looked too orange. One looked too friendly. One looked like the color of a Ferrari driven by somebody who still checks prices. Eventually, Ferrari developed a multi-layer finish containing red, black, and microscopic reflective particles. From the front, the Enzo appeared bright red. From the side, it became significantly darker. At high speed, reflections moving across the body made the car appear to change color. The owner approved it immediately. Then he added one final condition. Ferrari was never allowed to use the color again. The remaining paint was allegedly sealed inside several containers and delivered with the car so nobody else could reproduce it. The owner stored those containers in a temperature-controlled room beside the Enzo. Years later, when the car needed a small paint repair, nobody could remember the access code. The world's most exclusive red was locked inside a room its owner could no longer open. Hashtag number 9. The seat made from the owner's spine. The Enzo was designed like a road-going Formula One car, which meant the driving position mattered almost as much as the engine. Each owner could be fitted for the seat, pedals, and steering wheel. But one customer allegedly believed a normal fitting session was not precise enough. He claimed that every car he had ever owned caused discomfort after more than 20 minutes. So he sent Ferrari a complete medical scan of his body. Not his measurements. His entire skeleton. Ferrari engineers were reportedly given three-dimensional scans of his spine, hips, shoulders, and legs. The seat was then shaped around the exact curve of his back. Special foam densities were used in different areas. The steering wheel position was adjusted by millimeters. The pedals were moved to match the natural rotation of his ankles. Ferrari effectively built an Enzo around one human body. The result was supposedly perfect. For the owner, nobody else could drive the car comfortably. His wife sat too low. His mechanic could not reach the pedals correctly. A Ferrari test driver reportedly complained that the seat felt like being hugged by somebody else's skeleton. But the owner loved it. Until he gained weight. Less than 2 years after delivery, the most precisely fitted Enzo in existence no longer fitted the man it had been built around. He allegedly asked Ferrari to modify it. Ferrari refused because changing the seat would destroy the original engineering. So the owner hired a personal trainer instead. The Ferrari Enzo may be the only car in history to place its owner on a mandatory fitness program. Hashtag number 8. The Enzo that had to remain anonymous. Ferrari owners usually want people to know they own a Ferrari. That is roughly 60% of the ownership experience. But one Enzo customer allegedly wanted the exact opposite. He was an extremely wealthy businessman who did not want competitors, journalists, or even members of his own family to know he had purchased the car. So the Enzo was delivered under a contract containing unusual privacy requirements. The car could not appear at Ferrari events. It could not be included in promotional material. Employees were forbidden from photographing it. The transport truck had no Ferrari branding. Even the mechanics assigned to service the car reportedly had to surrender their phones before entering the owner's property. But the strangest part involved the badges. The owner allegedly asked Ferrari to remove every visible Ferrari logo from the exterior. No shields on the fenders. No Ferrari lettering. No recognizable badges. Ferrari initially refused. Removing the badges from an Enzo was treated like removing a signature from a painting. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The badges remained on the car, but special removable black covers were created to hide them whenever the owner drove in public. This was completely pointless, because the Ferrari Enzo looks like a Formula One car that escaped from a laboratory. You could cover every badge, remove the license plates, and paint Toyota Corolla across the windshield. Nobody would believe you. The owner supposedly drove it only at night. And even then, he was followed everywhere by people trying to photograph the mysterious unmarked supercar. He paid Ferrari to make the car anonymous, and accidentally created the most photographed Enzo in his country. Hashtag number 7. The contract that prohibited resale. Ferrari did not simply allow anyone with enough money to buy an Enzo. Potential customers were selected. Ownership history mattered. Relationship with the company mattered. Ferrari wanted the cars to go to people it trusted. According to one story, a customer signed an unusually strict agreement promising not to sell his Enzo for several years. Ferrari did not want early owners immediately flipping the cars for profit. The customer agreed, then sold the car almost immediately. But technically, he did not sell the Ferrari. He sold the company that owned the Ferrari. The Enzo had been purchased through a private business created specifically to hold the vehicle. Instead of transferring the car's ownership, the customer transferred ownership of the entire company. On paper, the Enzo had never been sold. It still belonged to the exact same legal entity. Only everything surrounding that entity had changed. Ferrari was reportedly furious. Lawyers studied the contract and discovered that the owner had found a loophole large enough to drive an Enzo through. The company allegedly updated future agreements to prevent the same trick. But the story did not end there. The new owner reportedly discovered that the company he had purchased included more than the car. It also contained the original owner's unpaid storage fees, insurance obligations, and a legal dispute involving the garage where the Enzo had been kept. He had successfully purchased the Ferrari without technically purchasing the Ferrari. He had also purchased several $100,000 of somebody else's problems. Hashtag number 6. The owner who ordered a crash test Enzo. One billionaire allegedly became concerned about the safety of his new Ferrari Enzo. He had seen photographs of destroyed supercars and wanted to know exactly what would happen during a serious accident. Ferrari provided technical information. That was not enough. He wanted proof. So he reportedly offered to buy a second Enzo for one purpose: destroying it. The plan was to crash the second car under controlled conditions, study the results, and then modify the first car using anything engineers learned. Ferrari refused. The Enzo was limited, prestigious, and named after the company's founder. Intentionally destroying one for private research was considered completely insane. The customer increased the offer. He agreed to pay for the second car, the test facility, replacement equipment, engineering time, and confidentiality. According to the story, Ferrari still refused. So the owner found another solution. He purchased a heavily damaged Enzo from an insurance company. The wreck was transported to a private facility where engineers rebuilt portions of the chassis and subjected it to structural testing. They tested the doors, the carbon fiber tub, the fuel system, the seat mounts. Every result was documented. The owner then asked for his road car to be reinforced. But after studying the data, the engineers reportedly told him the additional reinforcement would make the Enzo heavier and slower. He immediately canceled the modifications. Apparently, safety was extremely important, right up until it threatened the power-to-weight ratio. The destroyed Enzo chassis was supposedly displayed inside his private garage as a sculpture. Visitors assumed it was modern art. In a way, it was. It represented the exact moment a billionaire decided performance was more important than survival. Number 5. The Enzo that listened to its driver's heart. Ferrari engineers have always studied how drivers interact with their cars. Steering inputs, throttle position, braking force, reaction time. But one experimental Enzo allegedly went much further. The driver wore a small sensor that monitored heart rate and breathing. The car used this information to determine how confident the driver felt. If the driver remained calm, the Enzo delivered full performance. If the system detected sudden panic, it softened throttle response and adjusted the traction control. Ferrari had effectively created a supercar that could tell when its driver had realized he was not Michael Schumacher. During early testing, the system worked surprisingly well. Experienced drivers remained calm and received full power. Nervous drivers triggered additional assistance. Then a wealthy customer reportedly asked Ferrari to install the technology in his personal Enzo. But he demanded one change. He wanted the car to hide the assistance. The dashboard could never reveal that the system had reduced power or intervened. The owner wanted his passengers to believe he was controlling the car perfectly. In reality, the Enzo was secretly protecting itself from him. The system allegedly saved the vehicle several times. During one high-speed corner, the owner made a sudden steering correction. His heart rate spiked. The car reduced throttle and stabilized itself before he lost control. Afterward, he told his passenger that he had intentionally created a small slide. The Enzo knew he was lying. But unlike the passenger, it had access to the medical evidence. The project was supposedly abandoned because drivers became angry when they discovered the car was judging them. Ferrari owners were comfortable with traction control. They were less comfortable with emotional traction control. Number 4. The man who bought two identical Enzos. Collectors often purchase multiple versions of the same car. Different colors, different specifications, different production years. But one customer allegedly ordered two Ferrari Enzos built as identically as possible. Same paint, same interior, same options, same delivery date. He claimed one car would be driven while the other remained preserved. That sounded reasonable. It was not. The owner actually planned to compare them. He believed no two handmade supercars could ever be completely identical. So after delivery, both Enzos were taken to a private test track. Professional drivers measured acceleration, braking, top speed, lap times, temperature, and fuel consumption. And the owner was correct. One car was slightly faster. The difference was tiny. A fraction of a second. Probably caused by tires, engine break-in, environmental conditions, or normal production variation. But to the owner, this was unacceptable. He contacted Ferrari and demanded an explanation for why one of his identical cars was slower. Engineers inspected both vehicles. Nothing was wrong. The slower Enzo performed exactly as designed. The faster car was simply having a better day. The owner then instructed his mechanics to exchange components between the cars. wheels, sensors, exhaust parts, electronic modules. They spent months attempting to locate the source of the difference. Every time they believed they had solved it, the results changed. Eventually, the owner became convinced that the cars had developed separate personalities. He named the faster Enzo Cain. The slower one became Abel. He reportedly stopped driving them together because the competition had become unhealthy. 2 identical Enzos were built. A billionaire turned them into siblings, and somehow created family drama between carbon fiber machines. Hashtag number 3. The Ferrari with no production number. Every Ferrari Enzo carries an identity, a chassis number, a production history, a place inside Ferrari's records. But collectors have whispered for years about a prototype that supposedly had none. The car looked like a production Enzo, but several details were different. The body panels had unusual mounting points. The electronics used handwritten labels. The interior contained switches that appeared nowhere in the owner's manual. And the chassis identification area was allegedly blank. Ferrari engineers reportedly used the car to test components before final production. Suspension systems, cooling equipment, experimental engine software, different aerodynamic configurations. When development ended, the car was supposed to be destroyed. But according to the story, a senior executive secretly prevented that from happening. The Enzo was stored inside a warehouse under a simple internal name, Car Zero. Years later, a collector learned about it and offered to purchase the prototype. Ferrari refused because the car did not officially exist. The collector then offered to buy the entire warehouse. That offer was also rejected. Eventually, Car Zero allegedly disappeared. Some people claimed Ferrari dismantled it. Others believed it was moved into a private collection. One story says it was given a legal chassis number from another destroyed development vehicle. Another says it still sits inside a sealed room in Maranello. But the strangest rumor is that Ferrari occasionally removes the car from storage to test whether modern Enzos still match the original development standard. Imagine owning an Enzo and discovering Ferrari keeps a secret, undocumented version to determine whether yours is behaving correctly. Hashtag number 2. The owner who demanded Ferrari stop making the Enzo. Ferrari originally planned a limited production run, but overwhelming demand led to additional cars being built. Most customers were happy. One owner allegedly was not. He had purchased an early Enzo believing the final production number would never increase. To him, rarity was not an interesting feature. It was the entire reason for owning the car. When he learned Ferrari might build additional examples, he reportedly contacted the company and offered a solution. He would personally purchase every extra Enzo. Ferrari could build them, but none could be sold to anyone else. The cars would be delivered directly to him and placed into storage. Ferrari refused. So the owner proposed something even more ridiculous. He offered to pay Ferrari the expected profit from the additional cars on the condition that they were never built. He was essentially attempting to buy empty spaces on the production line. No cars, no materials, no assembly. Just money in exchange for keeping other rich people out of the club. Ferrari allegedly rejected that proposal as well. The company built the additional Enzos. The owner was furious. But instead of selling his car, he did the opposite. He began purchasing other Enzos whenever they appeared on the market. His goal was supposedly to control enough of the supply that he could influence prices. At one point, he reportedly owned more than a dozen. Different colors, different countries, different names on the paperwork. He had failed to stop Ferrari from increasing production. So he attempted to privately reverse the decision by removing cars from circulation. Collectors believed the Enzo was becoming rarer. In reality, Several of them were allegedly parked beside one another in the same underground room. Hashtag number 1, Project Founder. The most secret Ferrari Enzo story allegedly began with a customer who did not want to purchase the best Enzo in existence. He wanted Ferrari to build the Enzo that Enzo Ferrari himself would have ordered. Not a tribute. Not a special edition. A car based on the personality, habits, preferences, and philosophy of the company's founder. The project was supposedly called Founder. Ferrari historians studied old interviews, personal vehicles, engineering decisions, handwritten notes, photographs, and conversations with people who had worked with Enzo Ferrari. They attempted to answer impossible questions. What color would he choose? Would he want more power? Would he remove the passenger seat? Would he accept modern driver assistance? Would he care about comfort? One group believed the car should be brutally simple. Another argued that Enzo Ferrari cared primarily about engines and would demand the most advanced V12 possible. The customer gave them unlimited freedom and an almost unlimited budget. The resulting car allegedly used a heavily modified Enzo chassis with experimental aerodynamic parts, revised suspension, unique engine software, and an interior stripped of nearly everything unnecessary. There was no radio, no decorative luggage, no passenger vanity mirror. The passenger seat itself could be removed in minutes. Instead of a normal start button, the car used a metal switch hidden beneath a small cover. The engine produced significantly more power than the road-going Enzo, but Ferrari refused to publish the figure. The customer asked why. An engineer supposedly replied, "Because Mr. Ferrari would not have cared about the number. He would only care whether it won." But the project had one final condition. The car could never wear an Enzo badge. Ferrari believed placing the founder's name on a machine created from assumptions about his personality would be disrespectful. So the finished vehicle had no model name at all. Only a small metal plaque inside the cockpit containing a single word. Perhaps. The customer asked what it meant. Ferrari reportedly answered, "Perhaps this is what you would have wanted." The vehicle was delivered at night. No photographs were allowed. No public documents were created. The mechanics assigned to maintain it were selected personally. And according to the story, the car has been driven only once. Not because it was too valuable. Because after the first drive, the owner became convinced that the Enzo was too aggressive for public roads. He had paid Ferrari to build a car its founder might have wanted. Then discovered that a car designed for Enzo Ferrari was not necessarily designed for normal human beings. And that is the Ferrari Enzo. A car so exclusive that Ferrari selected its buyers, so expensive that owners treated contracts like suggestions, and so important that even fictional stories about it sound slightly believable. Because when a company builds a supercar named after its founder, normal luxury is no longer enough. Every owner wants a secret. Every collector wants the car nobody else was offered. And every billionaire believes the rules of limited production should apply to everyone except him. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe before Ferrari decides you need permission to view the next video.